I've done Naofumi Was A Saiyan, I've done Tanjiro Was A Saiyan, and now I'm here with What If Deku Was A Saiyan. This had a long time this was long time coming? Yeah, something like that. And, well, I'm sorry it took so long. Frankly, I don't know why I haven't done this yet, but here we are. And we are here for What If Deku Was A Saiyan Part 1, Prideful Warrior. And if you enjoy, as always, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a sub, make sure to leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. I'm trying to stay as consistent as possible. I've been extremely busy recently. I've been doing a ton of different things, other YouTube channels, I've been coaching football, and yeah, a lot of stuff that I've been really enjoying. I'm having a good time, but of course, I love making videos for y'all. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm here to stay. So let's get into the What If. What If Deku Was A Saiyan is about to begin. Let's get it. Izuku Midoriya isn't known as Izuku Midoriya. He was born on a different planet, and as a baby, he would be in an incubation chamber, waiting, installing, and everybody would be around him, looking into the chamber, seeing what type of power the kid has. It seems as if the kid sits around the lower to middle class range, which is unfortunate for the king of all the Saiyans. Obviously, they're trying to build an army, build a stronger one at that, but this Saiyan, or these Saiyans, are a little bit different. Prideful warriors, yes they are, but they don't just scavenge and kill for no reason, but they are forced under the rule of someone specifically. Someone not necessarily that much stronger than them, but strong enough to keep them under his heel. Izuku is just a baby at this time, but it would eventually, and very, very soon, the death of his family, his friends, and, well, his entire race would go. His planet would explode in a blaze of glory, but he was able to get off planet on a ship, just like one we know from a other universe. Izuku would be sent away by his parents while they look on as their child flies off to an unknown planet. They worry. They are worried about the kid that they weren't able to raise, that they weren't able to protect. Hopefully he doesn't get caught on the way there. That's all they can hope, as their planet would erupt into flames and a blaze of glory. Izuku would head off, flying through the entirety of space, eventually landing on what we know as Earth. But this peaceful planet would change drastically when Izuku's ship lands on the planet, crashing into a nearby forest in Japan. And oddly enough, a woman and her husband were currently walking by for their honeymoon. They've been walking around this forest for a while and been talking about having kids. But of course, even before this, years of dating, they decided to try, and it never worked. They walk up to this so-called space pod not knowing what it is, and when they look at it, they see a baby within that pod, immediately trying to get the pod open, but it opens on its own as a little AI voice begins to speak about how they landed on planet unknown, not knowing exactly what this planet is, and not knowing the name that the Earthlings call it. Of course, Izuku is just a baby. The baby is taken out of the ship, and obviously Inko doesn't know what to do with the ship itself. But with that said though, she calls up some people, or some hero type of agency, to go check it out. This is some technology that they would love to get their hands on and might even help in the near future. With that said though, they bring the child home, not saying much about him, but telling the hero agency that they would take care of him and make him, well, a legal human. And of course, the idea of aliens or an alien coming out of nowhere would be a cause for concern. I mean, why wouldn't it be? But with that said though, they go through tons and tons of interviews, tons and tons of research, and they want to make sure that Izuku, or the new Izuku, being named Izuku when obviously they got him set up, they would more or less go about their life kind of normally in a way. They didn't think too much about it. He had a tail, and that was about it. Maybe this was some mutation of a monkey that was out in space or something of that manner, but they don't even know. The experiments they ran, which weren't really experiments, just blood work and stuff like that, didn't really come out to be much. So what is it exactly? What is Izuku exactly? Well, one night, 6 years after the landing of Izuku's space pod, they would find out exactly who Izuku Midoriya is. The prideful warrior, or soon to be a prideful warrior, was a Saiyan from a far distant planet, and that would be known when he would stare out his window at the full moon. The full moon would cause him to transform into a giant ape, or a great ape, immediately thrashing around and basically causing mayhem. Immediately, tons of heroes would swarm to the scene trying to help, and Inko and Hisashi Midoriya would try and tell them exactly what's going on. Top heroes would try to subdue Midoriya while this is going on, but nothing is working. It seems like they can't get a hold of his tail, they can't track him down, they don't even know how to even eliminate or even stop him, if they can at all. Many think this has to be some sort of rogue quirk or some crazy dormant power that was within the boy, and to a certain extent it definitely was, but not what they think it is. This is no quirk, this is in his genetics. But luckily, someone comes up with the bright idea to try and chop off his tail. Maybe, just maybe, that is the difference. The mother and father did say that the tail was the only thing different in terms of the boy. Of course, he was a little bit rowdy here and there, but nothing insane. Buildings would come crashing down during this effort to cut off his tail, but eventually some of the top heroes are able to do it. But unfortunately enough, buildings begin to fall, and a lot of rubble would hurt and injure or even kill many people, including Hisashi Midoriya, the father of Izuku Midoriya, and the, husband of Inko Midoriya. Of course, that's not actually Izuku's father. Izuku's father is another Saiyan from a whole different world that is perished, but still, that is his quote-unquote adopted father. But as the tail of Izuku gets sliced off, he shrinks back down to the normal kid size he was. But this opens the eyes for the hero society, more like the hero agencies all around, including hero schools. And the biggest of them all would interact and reach out to Inko Midoriya, talking to her about the talent that her young child truly has and what this could mean for everybody. So the conversations would go on, and the conversations about Izuku would go on as well. These conversations consisted of the powers that he holds, the superhuman strength that he currently has, and so on and so forth. It seems as Izuku is growing up, he's been gaining more and more memories of his past, or basically of where he came from, of his former planet and the people that were on it. He does slightly remember some people and slightly remembers some things about the planet itself. But he doesn't exactly remember any crazy specifics, at least at the moment. But Inko would eventually allow Izuku to head off to UA High School. Yeah, this may seem extremely early, but they want to keep tabs on the young child, saying that they'll get him the education that he needs and basically have him go through the courses like normal, all of the younger courses, and then he'll obviously build his way up to high school, just like every one of his other classmates. But they want to keep tabs on him, maybe even train him, show him exactly how to be a hero, and eventually he might be one of the strongest heroes alive. Inko is given a position at UA itself just so that they can keep tabs on her and Izuku, but also give her a chance to make some money for both of them. Izuku obviously feels a lot more comfortable with Inko there, so with her there, it means that they should be able to get a lot more out of him. As the training would continue on, Izuku would learn more and more about what and who he is. Of course, he doesn't know crazy amounts, but he starts really gaining more and more intelligence and also gaining more and more insight about where he came from throughout this time. He's now around 12 to maybe 13 years old, and he now remembers a good little bit about where he came from. A planet that is very, very different than the one they live on now. He even says that he felt like he weighed at least 10 times more than what he does at the moment. Everybody is confused, thinking that that's insane. How could you withstand 10 times the gravity of where they're standing now? That would mean that they would weigh 10 times the amount. People would be walking around at thousands of pounds. That's not possible. But what they don't understand, and what their technology hasn't picked up yet, and soon will, is that Izuku's genetics is built for this, is built to do exactly what he's saying. Izuku would then display being able to shoot ki blasts, fly, and do various other things like that, and everybody would be in complete and utter awe. How is he able to do these things? What's going on? He has no quirk, and obviously they don't know what his power is. It must be the race that he comes from. Him being a quote-unquote alien must give him these powers. Obviously, it's not that simple. Being a Saiyan himself is a prideful warrior race that is built for combat. But at the same time, it's not as simple as saying, oh, he's an alien and that's why he has those powers. Because, well, for what they don't know is that there are many, many, many more aliens out there that may or may not have powers just like Izuku himself. But Izuku would continue training on, as some scientists at UA and support heroes on top of that will begin to experiment. This experiment will allow them to take the technology of the spaceship that Izuku had and implement that into some sort of gravity-like chamber. But they're actually not able to make a big enough chamber for this. This would take insane amounts of resources, and yeah, they might have a lot of money, but they don't have the technology necessarily, at least the replication of the technology, to make a big room for it. So they decide on something. They're going to give Izuku something that may allow him to basically train at insane heights, giving him this weird exo type of suit, but it just expands around his body. It regulates the gravity, making him more or less heavier and heavier as they go. One times would be normal, but 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, all the way to 10 times. And Izuku would eventually try it out, and he would struggle at every increment, but slowly but surely he could feel his body adjusting. More and more and more. Shota Aizawa, the one that's been training him, would obviously see this, and would be in complete and utter awe at the fact that Izuku is able to develop like this under the stress of gravity. Now this is definitely something interesting. They continue to put Izuku under this sort of training, over and over and over again. Of course, they give him breaks and stuff like that. They don't want to wear him out, but they can tell that Izuku is becoming extremely powerful, and throughout this time, he gains a heavy sense of pride from flat out fighting. He loves the thrill. He loves fighting as much as possible, even to the point that he tells everybody in UA that he's open to a challenge whenever and wherever they want to fight. That's just how he is. That's just who he is. He doesn't like losing, and all he does is want to win. And that's where that Saiyan blood truly runs through his veins. With that said though, he actually decides to pass on the free entry to UA. He tells them that he should know enough information and also be powerful enough to easily get through the entrance exam, so he'd rather do that or get a different exam and go through it as well. He says that he wants the challenge, so Aizawa decides to tell him that he'll be taking the recommendation exam, which is slightly different and more of the same aspects as the entrance exam, but it's against the best of the best in terms of the recommended people. Izuku is excited to hear this, asking if he's going to have a challenge and be able to fight anybody, but unfortunately he's told that there is no fighting in that exam, at least between the students. But he would get his chance against more or less competing opposition in certain drills and certain things that they have lined up. And a while would pass by, and it would be eventually time for the recommendation exam. Izuku would look around to see various people, some really impressive and some not so impressive. He would be walked up on by this big guy by the name of Inasa, talking to Izuku in a very loud and boisterous voice. Izuku then clenches his fist and puts it in front of his face, telling him or asking Inasa if he's strong and if one day if they can fight to see how strong he truly is. Of course, Izuku is psyched. He can feel the pressure of Inasa already. He can tell that he's been training hard, and he's been one of those people that have been training their entire life. Inasa looks at him and smiles, saying that they'll definitely fight soon. They just both need to, well, pass. And of course, that would be no problem at all. Unbeknownst to Izuku though, Inasa wouldn't be coming to UA. He would be going to a totally different school, and their fight unfortunately would have to wait far longer than Izuku would expect. Izuku would meet more and more people, even meeting the one by the name of Shoto Todoroki, the son of Endeavor. Izuku would be kind of annoyed by him. He would try to speak to him, asking for a fight eventually if they got into UA, and Todoroki would completely blow him off, basically acting like he didn't exist, talking basically as if he was talking down to Izuku, and Izuku did not like this at all. Let's just say these little tests that Izuku goes through in the recommendation exam will be a piece of cake. He obliterates every last one of them. The speed, the agility, the power, all of it comes in the package of Izuku. He has a good grasp on his power at this moment, and he's pretty prideful at the fact that he's at the top of the recommendations, even though technically he most likely didn't have to do any of this because they've been kind of running tests and training at UA for his entire life at this point. But with a couple of weeks before UA truly begins, Izuku has some time off. To hang out with his mother and really have some time off to figure out what he wants to do with his life. He would visit his father's grave from time to time, but Izuku barely even knows his adoptive father, as much as he cares about the fact that he passed away, and he obviously knows about the night that it occurred, being that it was his fault. He knows to a certain extent that's kind of what he was raised and born to be. Now he's something else. Now he's raised and born to be, well, a hero. That's his goal. And he's been seeing heroes after heroes do this. They have people like All Might that are just all powerful and basically this symbol of hope and peace. People like Endeavor, who scratched and clawed their way all the way to the top in order to stay, well, relevant in the scene. Endeavor is pretty inspirational in itself, but he is a bit hot-headed. Izuku obviously would want a fight with Endeavor one day, and maybe even All Might if he got the chance, but he's not so sure that would ever really happen. A letter would then eventually come from UA, and this would be a quote-unquote acceptance letter, but he already knew he was getting in, so when he opens it up, he didn't pay it much mind. He would open it up and a hologram would pop up, and he would hear a very familiar voice. It was All Might. All Might says that he is here and introducing the brand new member to the UA high school, Izuku Midoriya. All Might says that he's been definitely watching Izuku as he's been training throughout his years at UA. He's definitely impressed. Whatever power the young man holds is extremely powerful, and he has insane amounts of potential. He'll soon have the chance to truly show off what he has when he gets into UA. He understands that he's eager. The young man is extremely eager, especially because the sparring sessions are so limited with what heroes he can truly fight against. But once they get into UA, all of that does not matter anymore. The fights that Izuku wants are the fights that Izuku will get. He'll be able to spar whoever he wants, and the training will be as amazing as he can think. everything will fall into place for him, and he'll have a really good time doing it, and All Might assures him of this. And he even says that more and more powerful heroes will come along for him to fight, and that is a promise. All Might would then turn off his hologram, and that would be Izuku's acceptance into UA High School. Izuku becomes even more thrilled, excited, wanting for another challenge. So after some time would pass and eventually UA, the first day of UA, would begin, he would enter Class 1A through the giant door ahead of him. When he walks in, he immediately sees two people arguing over and over and over again. Katsuki Bakugo, someone that is familiar to Izuku, but not necessarily friends with Izuku, is right there. Izuku walks over to him and looks around him for a second and taps on his shoulder. Bakugo would turn around and would continue to yell, but Izuku would just ask if he knows him from somewhere. He looks familiar. He looks like that little kid with blonde hair that he knew so long ago. Bakugo is shocked to see this. This is the same kid that had a monkey's tail. It's so odd to him. What happened to his tail and why is he even here? But as Bakugo is saying this, realization washes over him. His tail. The monster that crushed a city. Holy shit. Bakugo realizes who this is and why he hasn't seen him in so long. Bakugo then, in his own way, asks where he's been and why he's been gone. Izuku says he's been at UA, training. They took him away after some occurrence happened. There's nothing to really be concerned about, but that is something that occurred, and now he's, well, in a position to be a strong hero, and that's all really he needs to know. Izuku would walk away, and then while he's walking away, tells Bakugo that maybe one day they can fight to see who's truly the stronger one. He sits down, and Bakugo takes this as a challenge, of course, but to Izuku, he knows that he outclasses Bakugo by a mile, at least at this point. He's not sure exactly how Bakugo's quirk would work fully, but in terms of pure strength, Izuku would outclass him by a mile. As they wait there, eventually the whole class would stumble in, and Aizawa would walk in as well. Aizawa would talk to everybody about what's going to occur and how they are not going to orientation, that they already get enough people clamoring about how amazing they are, so they're going to be taking a bit of a test, a bit of a challenge. Izuku would basically have to hold himself in his seat because he's excited for the challenge. He knows Aizawa can present extremely hard and difficult challenges, especially even fighting. Yes, Izuku might be strong, he might have superhuman-like strength, but it took a while for him to get to that. Even under gravity-like training, that gravity training took forever for him to gain, even up to 10 times gravity. Izuku wasn't used to the gravity, and frankly, he didn't go through enough intense training to be ready for that gravity training. So it took him the entirety of the time there, or from the time they got it until the time he goes to actually UA, to get used to it. So yes, he's extremely strong, but at the same time, in terms of technique and stuff like that, he is a little bit flawed. So all of these challenges that Aizawa will present, Izuku loves to see them, because this gives him another hurdle to jump over to become stronger. He listens in, and it's a quirk assessment test, which Izuku technically doesn't have a quirk, but he assumes that it's just going to be kind of like this physical-like test. They would all head out, get changed into PE uniforms, and Izuku would wait on the sign for Aizawa. Aizawa would then call up the person that got first in the UA entrance exam, which was Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo walks up, and Izuku is shocked to see this, thinking that maybe he underestimated Bakugo, maybe he's actually extremely powerful. Number 1 in the UA entrance exam, and he got number 1 in the UA recommendation exam. This must mean that he's strong, and he wants a fight. Well, he'll have to hold off on that, so he'll just have to compete in the quirk assessments. Izuku would watch as Bakugo would launch a ball as far as possible. Watching as Aizawa would observe Bakugo do this, Aizawa would then look at his little radar and see how far the ball went. seeing the ball went almost 1,000 meters, sitting around 900 or so meters. He's pretty impressed, telling him that he did pretty good, that we'll have to see how everyone else does as well. Bakugo walks away, and immediately Izuku is called up next. Izuku would grab the ball and lean backwards as he chucks it as hard as possible, and the radar begins to say 5,000 meters and climbing, getting all the way up to about 6,500. Izuku launched it with all his power, especially after seeing how Bakugo did it, and he wanted to make sure that he put his stamp on this so-called little Quirk assessment. He wants to make sure that everyone knows that he's going to be at the top of the class, and he's going to be at the top of everything. That he's going to be on the road to being the #1 hero and the top hero in the entire world, not just Japan. Izuku, in technicality, doesn't even have a quirk, in which they do kind of hide that a little bit, saying that he has some sort of strength enhancement quirk, but also energy manipulation as well. It's a combination of both of them. They can't just tell everybody that he's some sort of, well, alien. That's not how it works. But Bakugo would reveal that he was that monkey ape thing that was destroying a city all those years ago when they were younger. And immediately Aizawa looks at him and grabs him with his scarf, asking how he came to that conclusion. And Bakugo explains how he did, but of course, that doesn't matter necessarily to Izuku. Izuku knows that he couldn't control that power. Whatever that power was something that more or less slipped out of his hands. He couldn't do anything about it, and he was just a kid. In which everyone is kind of shocked to hear this and a little bit scared. He was that giant ape? I mean, what if he does that again? And immediately Aizawa is about to say something, but Izuku tells them that if they're scared of him from that little incident when he was a kid, that they have no chance at being a hero anyways. They should just leave right now. Izuku puts his hands in his pockets as he lines back up, and everybody tries to talk back, but Aizawa says he's right, that Izuku was just a kid when that happened. If they're terrified of him back then, they'll be scared of him now. And if you're scared of a student at UA that is potentially becoming a hero, you have no reason to be fighting villains. Aizawa being mad at this remark, especially at the fact that, well, they're terrified of one of their students, he makes it clear that whoever gets last place will be expelled, and if anybody doesn't try their hardest and thinks they can coast to the middle area, let's just say they'll be expelled with them. Immediately, everybody's basically on their toes, ready to go 100%, and that's exactly what they do, going 100% the entire time to make sure that they get the highest score possible. Izuku easily gets at the top of the class. Second place is Todoroki, and the next is Bakugo. Bakugo extremely frustrated at the fact that he actually slipped down the list a little bit, especially with Izuku more or less being as cocky as ever. But at the same time, it's not cockiness, it's just him being straight up prideful about it. Izuku knows his strengths, he knows his weaknesses, and he knows how strong he can be, so he focuses on that to become the strongest he possibly can be. Aizawa would then eventually expel the person that would get last, which was actually Mineta. Mineta would get last, but he would be brought back the next day, and he would explain that it's just a way for him to get them in the right mindset so that they can truly try their absolute hardest. That next day at UA though, everything would change. Their first actual training would begin. Heroes versus villains, a training that would more or less simulate what's going to be out in the field and what they're going to have to deal with on a daily basis, and everybody in the classroom would wait, but Aizawa would say that he's actually not their teacher for the day. They're all confused. Well, then who's their teacher? Immediately, the door would swing open and a loud and giant "I am here" would come through the door. All Might is going to be their teacher for this time around. All Might is going to teach them how to be true heroes. Izuku wanted a chance to fight, to show off his strength, and he'll finally be able to get that. But what he doesn't know is that he'll be able to get far more than just fighting his classmates, because when the future continues on and he goes throughout everything in UA, there's more to come and more fights for him to be challenged by than he could possibly imagine. But that is for the next part of What If Deku Was a Saiyan. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a sub, make sure to leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. I hope y'all enjoyed, and I hope all of y'all have an amazing day. Later.